Russian President Vladimir Putin is giving assurances that Russia would not breach any agreements concerning Korea. This comes after his meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jonguns this week in far eastern Russia. According to President Putin, Korea is Russia's neighbor, and one way or another, Russia must build good neighborly relations with them. Russia, which has backed sanctions against North Korea, has said repeatedly that it wishes to deepen its relationship with Pyongyang. But this has riled up South Korea and the United States, who say that any military deals between Putin and Kim would breach UN sanctions against North Korea. Similarly, the Kremlin is backing up Mr. Putin's comments, with spokesperson Dmitry Peskov saying Russia and North Korea had not signed any agreements on military matters or on any other areas during Kim Jong-un's visit. Mr. Peskov told reporters that there had not been a plan to sign any formal agreements during the visit, which saw Kim hold one-on-one talks with President Vladimir Putin and visit different places in the eastern region. Now, Washington and its allies fear his visit could strengthen Russia's military in Ukraine and bolster Pyongyang's missile program. Nevertheless, Mr. Kim is still in Russia and has inspected a Russian fighter jet factory that is under Western sanctions on Friday. Footage released by Russian officials shows his arrival to the town of Komsomolsk on Amur in Russia's far east. The regional governor and other officials meet with Mr. Kim on a red carpet at the town's railway station before going to a vast aviation plant that produces warplanes and other equipment. The Komsomolsk aviation plant is named after Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, the first person in space. The plant produces Russia's most modern fighter jets, including the Su-35 and Su-57. The plant also manufactures civil aircraft. Mr. Kim was shown facilities producing parts for the military jets as well as the civilian Superjet 100 aircraft, which Russia aims to produce without imported contents. We had mentioned previously, senior diplomats and defense officials of South Korea and the United States have agreed that military cooperation between North Korea and Russia is a serious violation of UN sanctions, and that allies would ensure there is a price to pay. Now, the officials were meeting in Seoul to discuss deterrence against growing threats from North Korea and have called on Moscow to show responsibility as a permanent member of the Security Council. U.S. Under-Secretary of Defense Sasha Baker said the allies will identify, expose, and counter Russian attempts to acquire military equipment for the war in Ukraine. And the United States is not happy about North Korea's missile launches on Wednesday. Just an hour before leader Kim Jonguns met President Vladimir Putin in Russia, North Korea fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the sea off its east coast. This appeared to be the first launch to occur while Kim was abroad for a rare trip with most of his top military leaders.
Ballistic missile launches. The launches are in violation of multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions and are the latest in the series of launches that pose a direct threat to the DPRK's neighbors. They undermine regional security, and our commitment to the defense of the Republic of Korea and Japan remain ironclad.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to visit the U.S. Capitol next Thursday. He is expected to meet individually with lawmakers and members of the leadership and will not address a joint session of Congress. The visit comes as Congress is weighing a White House request for additional aid to Ukraine, but its passage remains in doubt, with the GOP fiercely divided over the issue. Zelensky addressed a joint session last December, but opposition to Ukraine funding has grown, particularly inside the House GOP. The anticipated visit comes as part of a broader trip to the United States, as Zelensky is also attending the UN General Assembly in New York next week. In the meantime, Washington says it is not worried that sanctions imposed on Turkish firms as part of a broad action against Russia could derail Sweden's bid to join NATO. Addressing reporters on Thursday, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller added that the sanctions are not connected in any way to the accession and should not have an impact. The Biden administration has imposed sanctions on 5 Turkish companies and a Turkish national, accusing them of helping Russia evade sanctions and supporting Moscow in its war against Ukraine.
We have a constructive, warm relationship with the Turkish government. They are an important ally of ours. The president met with President Erdogan not too long ago and reiterated that fact after the meeting. We continue to work with them to communicate that NATO accession is important for Sweden and should happen as soon as possible. And we take President Erdogan's assurances that it will happen at great value. And we don't see these as any way connected, and we don't see that in any way these sanctions should have any impact at all on that accession.
In Ukraine, a section of the Crimea Bridge has reopened for traffic. The Crimean Bridge linking the Russian mainland with the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia annexed from Ukraine in 2014, has been a target of increased air and sea drone attacks in recent months. An explosion on July 17th on this section killed a Russian couple while their 14-year-old daughter was injured. Moscow said it was a Ukrainian attack that knocked out part of the bridge linking Russia to the Crimean Peninsula. And joining us now is former British police officer and national security risk strategist Vince Onyekwelu. He is in Anambra State. Mr. Onyekwelu, thank you for joining us on the program today. My first question to you is, Russia says it did not sign any military or other agreements with North Korea during this summit. President Putin even says Russia won't breach any agreements. Do you trust this?
Thank you so much. Good evening to you and good evening to Nigerians. Honestly speaking, one of the topical issues about national security is about national secrecy. Whether President Putin and the North Korean president signed a military agreement shouldn't be anybody's problem, because they are independent nations that can decide to have military collaboration, technical collaboration, tactical collaboration, if they so find the common grounds to do so. However, the pressure from certain countries of the world trying to confirm if Russia and North Korea had any military agreement is just their own personal prerogatives. However, it's very obvious that Russia has found in North Korea a probable, a tangible partner for military collaboration. So whether a deal was signed or not shouldn't be anybody's concern, because when the President of the United States of America, Mr. Biden, went to the eastern countries of the world, nobody was asking him if he signed a military contract with anybody. So I think Russia has the right to sign, and they also have the right to keep quiet about their personal military collaborations.
Well, it appears that Kim Jonguns' visit is over, from what we know. What do you think is the significance of his visit, traveling out of his country really for the first time in 4 years?
Yes, in 4 years, a president of a nation has decided to stay inside his country to manage the ingenuity of his nation. Remember, North Korea has been isolated by the world or majority parts of the world for decades, even before the death of his father, while even the time of his grandfather. They've been isolated. But miraculously, this isolation made them to become a nuclear power. They were able to enrich their own uranium. They were able to mine their own uranium. They had the technology, the academic, and the intellectual prowess to build a nation. They are not indebted to the World Bank. They are not indebted to the IMF. They have been able to look inwardly to build a nation from the ingenuity of its citizenry. And for me, as a business person, that shows a very strong determination of a nation to succeed. Look at our dear own nation that is an open economy, friends to all the whole Western world. We do not even have a train line from Abuja to Lokoja, but North Korea, a locked down nation, has a train line that can run from North Korea to Russia. They have a train line that can run from North Korea to Vietnam. So I think the signals are there that for 4 years, he locked down to look inwardly to find strength in his nation. And I think it's a lesson for other nations to know that you have to look inwardly to find solution for your needs.
That's actually that's a great tune to sing, absolutely. And do you see a possibility or a scope of military cooperation between Russia and North Korea, even though Russia says it's possible but denies signing any agreement?
Yes, I do see a potential military collaboration between Russia and North Korea. Why do I say this? Look at Africa, for example. Africa has the most, the significant number of uranium raw materials in the world, but yet no African nation has the capacity of nuclear power. Do not forget, nuclear power is not only about nuclear bombs. We can use nuclear power for energy, for electricity, and for other needs. Most armored plates of tactile vehicles, armor-piercing vehicles have got uranium enrichment that helps them to be able to penetrate walls that are impenetrable. So nuclear power is not purely meant for nuclear bombs. Now, if you look at nations like Iran, Iran has been able to become a world power in drone technology. They have built a wonderful tactile system for drone technology. So if Russia prefers to collaborate with Iran or prefers to collaborate with North Korea for tactile and military cooperations, I think it's a free world. It's for us to learn how to collaborate with nations and for us to build the capacity, what you call in economics, the comparative advantage, for you to be seen as a nation that have dreams, that have ingenuity, where the skills of the young ones can be tapped in to build a powerful nation. So I think Russia can collaborate with North Korea. They can also collaborate with Iran and even any other nations that are willing, that have the tactical systems. And I think for African nations, we have to ask ourselves questions. We are still fighting for Ukrainian grains when we can go there, take the grains from Ukraine and find the right soil system to cultivate these grains and have our own grains in Africa, not depend on Ukraine for grains. Those are two basic things that nations need to fight against and have.
I wonder, Mr. Onyekwelu, what sort of message does the summit convey, and could this change Russia-North Korea relations? And let me add to that, what message does the summit convey, and what does it mean for China as well? I mean, President Xi's government.
Narratives and the propaganda. Don't forget that propaganda is a very integral part of warfare. National security is a very integral part of warfare. nations that protect their communication and their intelligence are nations that know what the time is saying. Unlike nations that rely on foreign technology, for example, our dear country, almost every ministries have got the kind of CCTV systems, camera systems that were imported. Even our intelligence agencies have got CCTV cameras that were imported, and they don't know if there are chips in the systems that can divulge information that you think that are meant to be secret. So I think China, Russia, North Korea, these countries have seen themselves to have been isolated by certain countries of the world. So they are seeking to have a new collaboration that can keep them afloat to face the other side of the world economically, militarily, and socially. Don't forget, most nations of the world will not play with any country that has nuclear power. A country like India, self-sufficiently, found the right technology to build their own nuclear energy. They are not using it to fight any wars, but they are using nuclear energy to help the eco and socio-political system in India. So there are the countries that we call the axis of evil based on Mr. Bush and Mr. Obama. So nations like Syria, Iraq, all of them were axis of evil. But we are yet to see the evil of the nuclear power they have. They don't have it. So I think it's allowed for nations to found collaborations, just like the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and with the potential for nations like Saudi Arabia and Turkey and the rest to join them. It shows that nations are trying to find collaborators they trust, that have ingenuity and technology and the inward look on their citizenry, the youth, to build a powerful nation. If you're not powerful, if you're not strategic, they will not ask you to join the BRICS. So I think Russia, China, North Korea has every human right to collaborate for the good of their nation, so far it's not for anything dirty for the world.
I wouldn't be surprised if the United States wants to collaborate. Some feelers in the U.S. say the U.S. wants to talk to North Korea, but doesn't know how. Could the U.S. be looking to maintain or develop closer ties with North Korea, which really would almost be attributing more power to North Korea?
Yes, I've seen that particular news narrative that the U.S. are interested to speak to North Korea, but they do not know how. Honestly, the how is there. The USA can send me to North Korea and I'll go speak on their behalf to the North Korean. I think North Korea will be willing to speak to the USA because every nation of the world needs one another for collaboration. Look at the green and yellow striped train that the North Korean president came all the way from North Korea to Russia. The lobsters and the red wine on that particular train, I have intelligence that most of them are French wine. So that means North Korea is trading with France for them to have such luxurious red wine on that 90 carriage train that took the North Korean president all the way from North Korea to China. North Korea has business links with Sweden. They bought Volvo products, Volvo vehicles that is very rare in Nigeria from Sweden. So North Korea is trading with other nations of the world. Although people make it to seem that North Korea is not talking to anybody. North Korea is a trade collaborator with Sweden. They trade with France. They trade with Italy. So I think the US should feel free to speak to North Korea. And they can find common ground as independent nations. It's only when the US tries to push North Korea down or to create a new faction in North Korea that could potentially destabilize North Korea, that is when they should be worried. But if you have a clear conscience, you should fear no accusation. The US should talk to North Korea, and North Korea should talk to USA.
All right. Thank you very much. That was Vince Onyekwelu, our former British police officer and national security risk strategist. Appreciate you.